Hey there, film fans. I'm Jeff.
I'm Dave.
And I'm John, and welcome back to The Love of Cinema, a pod in which we'll challenge one another to discuss movies, both new and old, with a strictly positive, critical eye.
That's right. And to avoid any lazy negativity, we are making this a drinking game.
A what?
Drinking game.
That's right. We are a positive criticism podcast. We don't like people getting lazy and negative for the sake of sounding smart. So if you try to say something smart and it comes out stupid, or if you're just downright mean or negative, you are going to hear this sound.
Drink,
and that means that we have to drink, and therefore we ask you all at home to join us in drinking as well.
What are you laughing at?
Oh, that was great.
Pour yourself a glass, join us, and give it up the films you love, and perhaps a film that needs some love this week.
Yeah, we're going to be talking about some films from the year 1976.
Good
a fantastic
Good film
year in film. Fantastic year in film. But first, let's send it right over to John for our weekly shout-outs.
Shout-outs! All right, as usual, we're going to give it up for our beer sponsor. He's based out of Queens, New York. His name is Carlos Barroza. You can give him a follow on Instagram. The handle is Barroza Bar 2019. That's CBARROZOBAR 2019. And as always, the music you hear on this episode and every episode is provided by the artist Dasein. That's Dasein, Dasein. You can find all the music available for free downloads at soundcloud.com/Dasein-artist.
Free.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Free downloads from
Free.
Dasein, the artist.
Those
Free,
tracks are
giving
like
it
an
away.
hour long, too. So
Yeah.
Yeah, this
They
is a
really
real deal.
pump
Go
that
give it a
music
shot.
out. Oh my gosh.
Jeff,
well,
back to you.
We're going to be talking about some awesome movies from 1976. It really, really was a fantastic year in film. We're not just saying that because we are forced to talk about it. We chose, as you can see in the title of our episode, some incredible films that maybe the AFI Top 100 list has taken a keen liking to, and then a third film that the AFI did not. But first, let's go around the horn with what you've been watching and or any news that you want to share. Shall we start with you, Dave?
sure. I've kept Raised by Wolves going on HBO.
Awesome.
I saw a review come out for it this week where they really slammed it, and I just want to say that they can obviously they watched the first 3 episodes and then tuned out because this thing just gets better as it goes.
Yeah.
And it's really slow to get go. He eases you in, but geez, it gets better as it goes. So
Awesome.
I feel like that was horribly misreviewed. And also, did you hear Regal might be closing down all their cinemas again?
Ugh.
Holy shit.
Yeah, their parent company is pulling all their cinemas across the UK and possibly doing to most of them in the US as well.
Oh my God.
Like shutting the doors.
Wow.
Great.
Man.
Yeah, that's my news
That's
and
crazy.
what I watched.
I mean, not crazy, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that makes sense,
yeah,
right?
interesting
Like,
times.
That's going to start happening.
Yeah, I mean, they say that AMC's got about 6 months left before they'll have to raise more capital. So we'll see how we go. But if you lose the 2 big theater chains, I mean, when we come out of this, hello mum and pop theaters, but if they survive.
Hello, Mom, Pop. And what we were talking about a few weeks ago with the, I still think the streaming services are going to take that opportunity and just
Oh, yeah.
dominate. Like they're
Yeah.
already on top. They're going to just start buying their own shit and exhibiting their own stuff, and we're going to have to choose between which.
Yeah, you'll see Disney.
wanna
Yeah,
go to
you'll
the
see
Amazon
Disney
theater
theaters
or
and
the
Netflix
Netflix theater.
theaters. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's going to be weird, but whatever. Hopefully you're right, and the mom and pop theaters will rise again.
We'll see where it ends up.
Yeah. I watched the last season, the most recent season of It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, which I had not caught up on recently, and had a wonderful time. Those guys are still funny. I don't know how they're doing it. Still funny. And I finally watched the movie In Cold Blood. I've been talking about that so long. I'm ready to move on with that in my life. But I finally watched the movie. The film is wonderful. Holy crap. I had heard a lot of people say really interesting things about it just in my life and film and stuff. I wanted to read the book first. Anyone who doesn't feel like reading the book, I will pitch the shit out of this movie. It was so interesting. They did a lot of really groundbreaking stuff. Still shot in black and white, even though I think it came out in the late 60s. But it's really wonderful. I really enjoyed it. And then obviously I watched these 3. How about you, Jeff?
I actually watched more than I thought I would. I have a pretty busy fall going on. I am certainly not going to watch as much this upcoming week because I have a couple projects due in my graduate studies. But I watched all of Broadchurch season 3.
Mm.
It was really, really cool. The ending was not great. We talked a lot last week about endings and whether or not how important they are. And to be honest with you, the ending it's wrong. The person they said who did it didn't do it.
Oh,
I'm
no,
sorry,
dude.
they're wrong. They're wrong. But whatever, it's over. I enjoyed the ride and it was great. So I love that. So we did that. We started the series on HBO with Patton Oswalt and his now deceased wife, where they're trying to track the Golden State Killer.
Yes.
Or he's a rapist and killer.
Yeah, I talked about it.
And we watched
I'll Be Gone in the Dark.
Have you seen
You
it?
did.
Have you seen the end of that yet?
No, so we watched the first episode and
Okay.
we just watched all of season 3 of Broadchurch is about rape,
Yeah.
sorry. And so immediately we watched episode 1 and it was all about rape and we were like, okay, we just need a different subject matter this week. So we finished Pen 15, which is a comedy. And then I watched number 1 on Netflix this week is a movie called American Killer, The Family Next Door. And they use primarily actual footage that was either Facebook Messenger or police body cams or surveillance cameras. So it's a documentary of a true crime that actually happened, and they use real footage. It's not even like most documentaries, they have to go back and they have to pay actors to do reenactments and stuff and they try to make it look artistic. But that they actually have them and the wife of the guy who goes missing was a kind of, you hate to say it, but she was on social media too much. And so there was tons of content of her and the kids like leading up to when they go missing that they stole from they took from their Facebook Messenger.
Wait, this
So all those
isn't a
people-
documentary about Carol fucking Baskin, is it?
No, buzz yourself for giving it a stupid camera. Let's get there. No, but anyway, so I watched that. It's if you're a sucker for that genre, I am kind of thinking about like narrative films when you can just basically hire a really good editor to edit together a really good it's a good narrative, even though it's real and it's a documentary. It kind of reads like a narrative. Like there was a part of me thinking like, am I being manipulated? Was I lied to? Was I wrong about this? And somebody actually paid actors that made it look like, you know what I mean? So something to think about in the narrative
Really
world.
funny that you watched that, given the second movie we're talking about tonight.
No, I know. I mean, this whole, yes, you're 100% right. That's it. No other news. Is there anything you wanted to say about I'll Be Gone in the Dark that I brushed over or no?
No.
Cool. Just checking
That's
in.
cool. I
So
thought it was
anyway,
worth watching. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I'll get back into it. But anyway, we got to move on, people, because
We've got to
let's do it.
discuss
Let's do
this
it. Let's
little
get
known film.
all right, so we'll talk about the films that are in the episode title in a second. 1976 in film, number 1 at the box office. You guys, guesses? I love that you don't check. This is
Was
like
it
the 6th week
Rocky?
in a row, but I'm really happy. Yeah, it was Rocky for sure. $55.9 million in 1976, which I imagine would be a lot more than that today. Number 2 is A Star Is Born. I think this is the 3rd installment of A Star Is Born, or the 2nd.
Yeah.
Chris Christopherson. You got King Kong, another reboot at number 3. You got Silver Streak. Hell yeah. All the President's Men at number 5. The Omen, which, by the way, I think I said it a couple weeks ago. The Omen, the original Omen, might be my favorite horror movie of all time. That was on our short list for films that we were going to do this week.
Yeah, that
The
was close.
Omen. The Bad News Bears, The Enforcer, Search of Noah's Ark, and Midway, other movies that I've never heard of and didn't care about. When it comes to the Academy Awards, so it's funny looking back on it because this is going to be the year that we remember Taxi Driver getting snubbed. And Network won a lot of acting awards. That's probably what's going to be remembered for. But Rocky winning Best Picture and Best Director is going to... It's definitely something that kind of, especially to film fans, Rocky winning Best Picture and Best Director. Scorsese wasn't even nominated for Best Director for Taxi Driver.
Yeah.
So, and Sidney Lumet, he's awesome, but I think he probably had already won maybe for Dog Day or something else. So, Sidney Lumet directed Network. All the President's Men was up, and Rocky wins everything. So if we were to go back in time and redo the Oscars, I don't know if Rocky would win all of these. But having said that, it is an awesome film. It really is fantastic. And the rest of the series is certainly fun. But the first film really, really is tight. Other than that, you got Marathon Man with Dustin Hoffman and Laurence Olivier. You've got Carrie. You've got Bound for Glory. A couple other familiar ones, but with Network, Rocky, All the President's Men, and Taxi Driver at the top, immediately you're already like, this is in the canon of great film years. Any other films that stood out to you guys?
Logan's Run is awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. The
movie is
TV,
really
the
crazy
TV
and
series
cool.
is pretty good too. I had a special place for that as a kid.
Nice.
Oh, I don't
Yeah.
think I didn't know they made it into
Yeah,
a
there's
TV
a I think
series.
it's a 2-season TV series as well.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
But no, I think
See if
those
you
are
can
the I
find
think
that
those are the
anywhere.
main movies. Yeah, good luck.
Right. Well, let's.
Yeah,
I mean,
I think those are the main ones.
1970. Yeah. I mean, but again, it's kind of crowded at the top, if you will, for those like 5, 6, 7 movies if you count The Omen and such. And then nowadays you have 20 films that are like independence-ish films that are awesome. That didn't happen too much in the 70s, but these are bangers that are really gonna ball. So the first one we're gonna talk about is Taxi Driver, obviously, and then we're gonna talk about Network, which is fantastic. We're gonna go ahead and say right off the bat, we do know that we are living in a time where the press is under constant scrutiny, and it's both Taxi Driver and Network have a lot of political under and overtones. So, we're realistic in the time we're living in, but we are going to stick to the film aspect of it. But these are cultural phenomenons that very much are political films. So we're going to be, aware of that moving forward. I'll put it that way. And then finally, we're going to talk about Stay Hungry, which, if you've never heard of, think about this cast: Jeff Bridges in his 20s, Sally Field right around the age of 30, and Arnold Schwarzenegger, who gets billed as introducing Arnold Schwarzenegger. He had already done Hercules in New York, but he still was sort of up and coming, although he was he was a Mr. Universe winner already by this point. But yeah, Sally Field, Jeff Bridges, Arnold Schwarzenegger in Stay Hungry as our redemption film, or was it really that bad? So stick around for that segment as well. But first, we should get into Taxi Driver. I'll just read briefly the IMDb blurb, which is: a mentally unstable veteran works as a nighttime taxi driver in New York City, where the perceived decadence and sleaze fuels his urge for violent action by attempting to liberate a presidential campaign worker and an underage prostitute. That is Taxi Driver, starring Robert De Niro in the iconic role of Travis Bickle, directed by Martin Scorsese. Jodie Foster is introduced in this and giving her what will go down as one of the greatest child actor performances of all time. You've also got Albert Brooks, Peter Boyle. You've got Sybil Shepherd, an incredible cast, Harvey Keitel. Who would like to get started with Taxi Driver? And how much do you want to talk about how shitty of a movie it is? I'm kidding. The movie's awesome. Anybody want to take it from there?
When was the last time? Let me kick it off with this question. When was the last time you guys watched this movie?
All the way through is with you in the apartment. We watched that like 5 or 6 years ago.
This one slipped through the cracks for me. I'd never seen it.
What?
Yeah.
Holy shit! You're going first, dude. You're going first.
You're going first.
Talk
Get
to
the
me,
fuck
dude.
out of here.
What was that like? What was that like after having? Obviously, I'm sure it's built up a lot culturally. Like, did it live up to your expectations? Did it surpass
fuck
it?
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Fuck yeah, dude.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, talk
Like
about it. Go for it.
There's half my notes here are missing. There's a giant fucking gap because I just stopped. I'm like,
Yeah.
we call ourselves a positive criticism podcast. That only works if there's something to fucking criticize. And there's not a lot to
Yeah, that's the
criticize in this movie.
That's the gimmick. This movie, these movies test our gimmick this week.
It's like right from the get-go, like they're introducing him in the taxi driving through town. It's like interspersed with extreme close-ups on the eyes and what he sees going on around the city. And it's like, it's this wonderful little imagery. And it's like, because that's how anyone sitting in the backseat would see him. It's just a pair of eyes. And the soundtrack is going from like really slow and then it just goes chaotic. And I'm like, okay, yeah, it's like you're introduced to his state of mind at the beginning. Like right from the get-go, this thing has like almost art film all over it because they've thought about the placement of every little thing. De Niro, right at the beginning, the first time you see him speak, he's just straight up goddamn likable. You love the guy. You're rooting for him, and then the decline starts, and you just go with him into it. And I can really see why a lot of people, because it's funny watching this now, why a lot of people compared Joker to this, because the tone is similar, the descent is kind of similar, and it is like this is probably what half that performance was based on.
And King of Comedy, the two De Niro's performances.
Those two movies for sure, like together make Joker.
I feel like there was we'll get to it later, but I feel like there was a little bit of Network thrown in there as well. So it's almost like they siphoned 1976 and threw it into Joker.
Absolutely.
But
I kept thinking this week that, and I want to hear you continue, but I kept thinking this week that it was so cool we chose both of these films, and obviously they didn't know they were making these films, but If network is the macro, Taxi Driver is the micro. You have the way it feels through Travis Bickle to live in that lonely, isolated world
Yeah.
of propaganda and fake bullshit. The bullshit, right? He's just eating the bullshit every day and he goes crazy. And then we'll talk about network and how they're commenting on the whole big picture and the puppeteers that are above all of it. But keep going. What did you think, Dave? I want to ask you a specific question. Cinematography wise, he does things in here. You can still feel like Scorsese is still like cutting his teeth. Like you can still see him like warming up into a lot of things that he masters.
You can still see them experimenting with technology and stuff as well. Like I posted on the Facebook page today, a great photo where they had the camera operator strapped to the front of the taxi with the camera, and that's how they got some of the shots. And like you can see a couple of times they roll a camera, like they track it down a hallway, and he's got that thing moving so fast the track isn't exactly level, so you get a little bit of a camera shake. But he went with that. Like, you've got time to go back and fix that. Back in the 70s, they could go over their shoot schedule, it didn't matter. And he made a choice to incorporate that stuff in. I love one of my favorites is when he's just taken Sybil Shepherd out to the adult film, and she's walked off on him, doesn't want to talk to him anymore, and he's making a phone call, and he's there basically begging on the phone, and the camera just rolls away and shows an empty hallway, and it's the perfect moment because you just cannot watch that anymore. It's just painful to watch. All right, do it.
Whoa, we got the gush warning early.
Straight up,
Dave. All of us. I want 3 gushes a segment.
Nerding out about this cinematography here. Wait, Dave, tell me. Sorry, not to cut you up, but also add to your talk about this. How did they do the effects where if you've seen Taxi Driver, you see De Niro's eyes, you see the street in front of him, and you see that windshield reflection of the light. So there's almost 3 different focal points in the same shot coming from 3 different angles. Do you know what I'm talking about, right? When he's driving in the cab. Is that just practical? Is that just great capture? Like, how are they able to pull that off?
Back then, almost everything was practical. It was very hard to do anything but. The only way I could think of, because I didn't actually look up how they did that, they may have used a diopter again, or a triopter, if you like, for 3 different focal points. But I don't even know if a triopter exists. But the other way to do it, of course, would be to project the reflections on the car. But again, you've got, it's a moving car, and
exactly.
Yeah, so
I know what you're talking. I mean, they do that a few different times. I feel like the strongest moment that happened for me, and I forgot that the movie ends this way. After everything you've gone through, it's so gripping, and then he looks up at the mirror real quick and shifts the mirror really fast. So there's this last tiny compelling moment, and then the mirror shifts, and you're stuck looking at the image that Jeff is describing, where you have this reflection of everything that's happening in the mirror, and you're able to see 2 different images through the windshield, and it just creates like all the way up to the last fucking second of the narrative. He chooses to like pull the rug out just a little bit visually to keep you inside, because you can't quite see Travis anymore at the end of it. Like, that's the last time we get to have his perspective, because we have only his perspective up until that last moment.
And it's a phenomenal performance from him. Obviously, Jodie Foster aces it.
Jesus, yeah.
Like, there's so much talent there on screen.
12 years old.
Yeah,
unreal, dude.
It was just everything was a joy to watch. It's a joy to watch, and it's also it's a joy, but it's painful as well. It's like it's not a pleasant film, and it ends in like gratuitous violence that apparently they had to desaturate to not get an X rating.
And of course, there's no such thing as a director's cut.
Literally.
There's no such thing as a director's cut. Right? So the other footage is gone. It's not like they can recut it. It's done. This is it.
Dave, you're talking about pulling the color out of the blood, aren't you? That's what they literally had to do. They had to pull the red out.
Yeah, and that was funnily enough, all they had to do, and in their opinion, it made it more shocking. And
who's in the room? Yeah. Who's in the room with these people that it's like, this is going to be rated R? What if we take the color grade down to this a little bit? And they're like, okay, fine, that's rated R.
Dude, it wasn't going to get an R. It was going to get an X.
Yeah.
Dave, what'd you think?
I thought it was going to get an X for the way that these guys were dancing with a 12-year-old prostitute. But I guess it's also because the last scene is very vivid. Nowadays, we're not desensitized to it. It's still striking, but the final, not the final 10 minutes. I would say from 15 minutes before the end to 5 minutes.
That scene with Harvey Keitel and Jodie Foster, that made me uncomfortable. I was not desensitized to that at all.
As it should.
I was like, how are they going as an actor? And like as actors doing this? Like this is.
That scene specifically, they actually met ahead of time privately, because Harvey was so uncomfortable, and he wanted to make sure
Yeah.
she was comfortable. That was the only way he felt like he could perform and actually get there. So they actually met ahead of time, not totally privately, but they got there and they rehearsed alone so that she could lead what she was comfortable with, and they built the scene around there in an improv together because it actually was only scripted in a couple lines.
And where were her
I know,
parents
Jeff, I know
while
what
they
you're
were
talking
rehearsing
about.
together?
She said, I listened to an interview. I listened to a bunch of interviews after I watched it the other night, and I was watching the 40th anniversary interview. And of course, somebody asked her, like, 12 years old, blah, blah, blah. And she was like, I was an actor. Like, I had done more movies than these guys I'm sitting here with at that age. I had already done more movies. So, that was just matter of fact. And she made a good comment that I thought was important. She said, if anybody is ever worried, I guarantee you had a more uncomfortable experience watching it than I did filming it. It did not feel that way. I was around professionals. Everyone treated everyone respectfully. Nobody ever took advantage of me.
Wow.
So this is just good storytelling, and it was just very effective.
Yeah.
Jeff, I did want to ask you, though, because I agree with you about the violence thing. And like this word gratuitous, I think this film probably received an even bigger reaction, but was very similar to the way people responded to Joker. Because unlike Tarantino, that is purposefully gratuitous, this is actually realistic and earned.
Yeah, I don't think this is gratuitous.
And I think it bothers you more in a way because that shit actually fucking happens.
Yeah.
And that's how it happens. Like literally the way they're filming it and the build up to it. It's not sexy. It doesn't have Sergio Leone deep zooms and then some epic operatic score in the background. It's naked and it's gross. And I mean,
the movie I thought about the most watching this, just because this is the way I think. I'm just constantly living in a world where I compare things to it, not in a bad way, but just like, oh, this reminds me of that. Maybe it just helps me commit them to memory. I don't know. But I did think about Joker, but only really when the famous, like, well, suck on this line happens.
Yeah.
And then there's a shooting that you think is an execution. And then in most other movies, there's like a run and then there's a cut or something. This just stays with De Niro, and he goes and he just sits down.
Mm-hmm.
And you're still sitting with him, and you're like, did anybody just witness this crime in the middle of the street? And the answer is no. And that reminded me of Joker. But other than that, I was thinking about Do the Right Thing, because the reason that the violence doesn't seem gratuitous is that by the time it gets there, you are so on board with him that you're almost like, how did we get here? Like, how did this come about, right? And obviously, Taxi Driver came first. Do the Right Thing subject matter is definitely more important than anything that's on this film, I would say. But that's just something that I definitely thought about a lot. I would say that the one part of this movie that I think proves how brilliantly Marty was weaving. He was so self-aware making this film that Travis Bickle, we shouldn't necessarily be obsessed with him, even though the movie requires us to be sort of obsessed with him. So you talked a little bit before about the scene where he takes his date, Sybil Shepherd, to a dirty movie. And she doesn't want to be there. Obviously, it's a porn. And so she runs out, and then there's the phone call. And that's when you're like, oh, he doesn't even realize he's a creep. He doesn't even realize he is kind of a weirdo. Other people would call him scum. Like, he doesn't realize that he falls into these categories. And then the next scene, right as the audience is on board with this, of like, oh no, who am I following? He drives Scorsese, and Scorsese now is the crazy person with the gun who says, "That's my wife."
Dude, that scene
That's not my
escalates
apartment.
so fucking fast.
It's an incredible, famous scene. It is director Martin Scorsese in the backseat.
Cameo, yeah.
And then De Niro is looking at him like he's the crazy one. And you as the audience are like, oh my God, I can't believe this guy is paying this cab driver and he's torturing this guy who you a second ago, by you, I mean me in this case, watching this, a second ago, I was like, Travis Bickle's a weirdo and a creep. And now I'm like, I'm on Travis' side. That guy's a weirdo and a creep. And now all of a sudden I'm on Travis's side again. It is like brilliant narrative. This is definitely the kind of movie where it famously, people saw this movie, and especially people, let's call them insiders, actors, directors, stayed and watched it again and saw it 7-8 times the opening weekend. Oh my God, great. I got the gush. I haven't gotten the gush in a while. It's so good. I'd like to thank all my friends. But this is definitely the kind of movie where you go through it and you're like, how did I get here as the viewer? How did this happen? What did that mean? And then you just have to see it again. You just have to follow Travis's story all over again and see what's going on.
It's almost voyeuristic, isn't it? Like,
Yeah.
This may be the best first
real.
person narrative ever captured on film because of what you're talking about. There have been other amazing first person narratives. Scorsese does them a lot, literally using voiceover and keeping the first person thing happening. But because this is so voyeuristic and so true and so dirty, that it touches people. Clearly, it like you said, it has touched everyone who has ever seen this movie in a very unique way. I watched leading up to this on the Criterion channel right now. If anyone is interested, on the Criterion app, all of Martin Scorsese's student shorts are available right now. So I watched them before I watched this.
Wow.
And you can see, you know, how he's developing his style and stuff like that. And there's a great interview in 1970 when he's talking to New York Public Radio about he's setting up films in the park. And he's talking to the interviewer about this new style of filmmaking that's happening that came out of the French New Wave and everything and is now in America. And I listened to those interviews, and he was saying very similar stuff in there that he also said after the making of a movie like Taxi Driver and Raging Bull. All of his work, nobody wanted to make it. Nobody wanted to give him funding.
Yeah.
So this is a very famous
De Niro made
example.
like 30 grand for this.
Yeah,
like
De Niro had just, if anyone who doesn't know, De Niro had just won the Academy Award for playing Vito Corleone in The Godfather Part 2, which is why they finally were able to get some kind of financial security. But part of that financial security was having all of the actors take some kind of cut. Specifically De Niro, I think he made $32,000 on paper from this movie or something, 30 something.
Yeah, they were really worried he'd ask for more.
Just goes to show you too that, like, one, Scorsese was born with that independent filmmaker mindset, and clearly he's never lost it. Nobody has ever wanted to happily fund any of his movies, and yet everyone who sees these things realizes the achievement that was made. Nobody, how do you think he felt when he went around saying, "Can you give us money? We want to make this movie, and we really believe in it." And they're like, "Hit me with the pitch." And he's like, "It's about loneliness and prostitution and political assassination and depression, and like there's nothing attractive about that." And yet clearly there was something that resonated in the zeitgeist when this film came out all over the world. He won the Palme d'Or at Cannes Film Festival that year. So it won the best film in France that year. And this thing has gone down in cultural history. It's an iconoclast, right? Over here in America, at least, like not just because of you talking to me, even though when you're a kid, even a kid knows what you're talking about. But as an adult, I have seen people like Dave. I have seen people who have seen this for the first time, who are grown adults. I have seen young people who are growing up, artists and non-artists. Everyone who sees this movie is deeply affected by it, because I think truth this raw almost never makes it to the screen. It took a handful of passionate, crazy geniuses to actually get it up there. And again, when we get to the next movie, I think you'll understand why, because we don't like to actually face the truth. And yet I want to ask you, as I just said all that bullshit, because I really want to ask you, we are also living in a crazy time like they were in the 70s when they made these movies. We are also dealing with tons of sadness, tons of loneliness because of the pandemic, and our politics all over the place. I was a little resistant to watching this movie. Network is a satire, and there's a lot of comedy in it, so it's a little easier to approach. I was a little resistant to this one. And yet when I watched it, just like you, Dave, the storytelling for me was so fucking captivating and compelling that I was entertained the entire time. It was inviting to me, and it actually was. I'm gushing. Yeah,
we got it. All three of us. This is the first Triple Crown. This is the first Gush Alarm Triple Crown
if
that
any
we've
film
ever
deserves
had.
it. But I want to ask you honestly, do you feel the same way? Because that truth hit me like a ton of bricks, and it was medicinal as fuck. I needed to see this movie right now.
Between that and Network, this was a very therapeutic week. I can tell you that. But I mean, this was definitely a case of, you're undertaking a journey. The thing I really liked was, like, it's granted in 70s films, there's a lot of like racial, homophobic slurs, that sort of thing. And normally we sort of take offense at those, go, that's not cool that they did that and that sort of thing. But in this case, they were very careful, and it was they did something different where the slurs are the opinion of that character, and that character pays for those slurs. And so it becomes like, it introduces you to the little bit of racism that's in his mind and in a lot of people's minds, but there's a consequence for that. And I thought that was really beautifully done, because it kind of put it at the forefront, but also managed to incorporate into the story without taking you out of what you're watching. Even for what I would class myself as a modern audience now.
Yeah. To take that further, I think, as Scorsese always does, he gets criticized for all sorts of things in his movies, because I think he is a steadfast artist and he expects you to do some work. You have to come into the film and make your own decision about that. So even though I agree with you structurally, narratively, there are consequences for the characters. This film got dubbed as a racist film. There were a lot of critics that had trouble with this, and a lot of audiences when it came out that just said a racist film because obviously Travis is racist. Did you guys feel like, as well as Loneliness, I think what this movie did for me, the first time I saw it especially, but I had a really good viewing this week too. It kind of pointed out that like everyone in this movie is insane to a certain degree. And I feel like the best example I can give of that is that when the Palatine, the presidential nominee, who or soon to be nominee, who is kind of in the background, this political race that's happening in the background of this whole movie, he gets into De Niro's cab and they have a little, oh, I know you, sir. And the guy says, oh, what do you care about the most in this world? Or what bugs you the most about America?
Scene, yeah.
And De Niro says, he starts kind of going off the rails a little bit and saying, well, honestly, it's the scum. You should start with the city. It's fucking disgusting. There's a bunch of whores and punks and there's a whole bunch of disgusting shit. And Scorsese goes right to Palatine's eyes. And you see, like, we're supposed to feel like, oh, the normal human being is reacting to this crazy man who's driving his cab. And you feel that way for about 10 seconds while De Niro is ranting. And then as the movie goes on, you start to realize who's crazier? Travis Bickle for actually seeing how disgusting the world had turned into in the lies, or a man like Palatine who was selling lies to people around America that it isn't that way. Who is more correct? And I'm not saying that one, it's so well done that you don't feel one way or the other. You start to feel the ambiguity of, am I insane for believing in any values that have been projected upon me by whatever, politics, social issues? I just feel like it opens all that up so well with a tiny single first person perspective. It is the best of
I'm glad you're getting, so you can view this film without caring too much about the politics of it. It could help you to view this knowing that this came out in 1976, which was a weird presidential year in which Jimmy Carter, who was a relatively unknown person before the Democratic National Convention, was up against Gerald Ford, who was the vice president under Nixon, who pardoned Nixon after Watergate, and then was running for re-election. Like, in hindsight, that almost seems
he just had
crazy.
2 shots taken at him at this point.
Yes. Speaking from, because they talk about a network. Yeah. So we have fucking Vietnam. So all of 70s art house films can be related back to Vietnam, starting in 1967, which was sort of pre-Vietnam, but with Bonnie and Clyde and with Rosemary's Baby in the next year in 68 and all the stuff that was going on in the late 60s. And then in the 70s, it was basically like that national cynicism put to action. Like, just like, fuck you. We're tired of the Kennedy assassination holding us back. We are now in the post-Vietnam. We know Vietnam is a piece of shit. We know there's liars. We know there's scumbags. This is leading us into Network too. But to stick with Taxi Driver, so now it's 1976 and Gerald Ford, who has assumed presidential responsibilities despite having not been elected, pardons the president who committed crimes that would have impeached him, and he probably should have gone to jail for them. And he pardons him and then is running for re-election because he's the moral compass the country needs. And this movie's coming out the same year, and there is a senator in this film. So there's no way that this movie was ignorant of that. So it could help you get on Travis Bickle's side, even though he says lines like this, by the way. Now that you know that we're in an election year here in 2020, I just want to go out and really do something. I got some bad ideas in my head. And he says this with complete sincerity to Peter Boyle, who's incredible in this film. Peter Boyle has 2 scenes, and I think he's fantastic. This monologue he gives. And then he says, look, you got to understand, you do a thing, and that's what you are. And now now Travis Bickle interprets that to be, he just says that's the dumbest thing he's ever heard. But he interprets that to be, well, I could be the renegade. I could be the savior, the John Wilkes Booth. I could be that like weird idol, And so he contemplates ending this Palatine's guy's life. And it's just like this whirlwind of stuff. If you look at it politically or not, there's so many different angles that you see in this. And the political one, because it's such a prevailing force in our culture, especially then and especially now, Martin Scorsese was brilliant in not going too far after it. The way that Network maybe was getting a little, rightfully so, but Network was way more confrontational politically. Scorsese was like, I'm just keeping this about Travis. People understand politics and such. And then over the decades, maybe people rewatching it didn't understand it. But in 2020, if you want that it's there for you, and it really does open up like a 10th dimension of this film if you want it.
It's just a perfect example. That reminds me of Stephen King has a wonderful book called On Writing, where he just kind of rants about his life as a writer, and the other half of the book is him talking about how to write. And when he talks about themes, he talks very specifically about how you should never be writing toward a theme. That is not your objective. If you tell characters' stories well, audience members will lift themes from them. And I thought this was just a perfect example.
Are you listening, final season of Game of Thrones? Are you listening?
Final 2 seasons. Stop giving season 7 a pass. Stop giving season 7 a pass.
Our first buzz. Okay, yeah, we're gonna wrap this up soon, I think. But I did want to just talk very quickly. Dave already mentioned it. The acting. This is just like quintessential 70s. I mean, the acting is through the roof. I watched all these interviews afterwards with a bunch of movies, all the actors, especially in his little family troupe that he worked with so many times. And you always hear about De Niro, Scorsese liked to rehearse with improv styles, and he never lets anybody improv like on screen, like super loosely, but he's pretty good about having rehearsals where they would start to behave with each other. And apparently that was the only note that he would really try to give these actors. They're all very well trained, of course, but he would always say, I don't want anyone to act. I don't want to see anyone acting, but I want you to start behaving like these people in this improv, and then we'll probably be able to find these characters. And I feel like it's so obvious in a movie like Taxi Driver, where I don't think that kind of performance would fly as easily anymore. And I think proof is in the pudding. I don't think people reacted to Irishman as strongly as I thought they would, because they're just as good in that as they are.
Oh my God, The Irishman is really fantastic. Give it a rewatch.
Right?
Take a couple nights. Give it 2 or 3 nights.
I think the thing I love most about, like, when we get towards the end, like, there's some really there's some happy accidents that happen in the cinematography, like the final scene where he's on the couch. Well, it's almost final scene where he's on the couch. He's been shot a couple of times, and he puts his finger up to his head to simulate a gun, and there's just a single blood drip off his finger. It's like, you can't program that. It was just like everything, the universe was in the zone, the magic happened, and you got this fantastic shot of this blood drip as he's like pretending to shoot himself in the head. And I do want to, one thing I do want to question, because there was one section that did make me laugh out loud, and it's when he's in the campaign office and they throw him out, basically, and the guy's like, officer, and you see Travis wander off out of shot, and then this really skinny old guy in a police uniform trots through the shot after him. I'm like, what is that guy gonna do?
I know. Is that what a cop looked like in the 70s? No wonder there was so much crime in New York City,
buddy.
The 70s in New York City was fucked up, by the way. It's the reason Trump exists, is because they were so riddled with just crime and poverty and bankruptcy.
I laughed really hard when he gets refreshments at the porn movie.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah.
Yeah, that was a really awkward scene.
Let's go around this viewing specifically, unless Jeff, you wanted to say anything about the acting, just because like this movie created Daniel Day-Lewis. This movie created so many people. Let's go around the horn then. It doesn't have to be your favorite scene, but this viewing, what scene affected you guys the most in this viewing? Was there one that really stood out to you?
I mean, like, for me, it was the Scorsese cameo scene where he's pulled over to the side of the road, and like Jeff mentioned, it was a really great way to pull you back into line. It's like, is he going off that? Nope, that guy's worse. And it literally pulls you back into line, and they almost gaslight you.
Yeah. Yes. It is so important structurally, because it does make you line up once again with Travis. You think he might be going too crazy, and you're still on his side.
Yeah, totally, so you drift, and then he pulls you back, and it's like, oh, I shouldn't have been pulled back. He was actually nuts.
The weirdest thing about our society is there's always someone crazier. For me, it was the Peter Boyle monologue. So if you've seen the film,
I love Peter Boyle.
Everybody's very obsessed with De Niro in this film, as they should have been. It's truly miraculous, as John said. It's possibly the best first-person narrative ever captured on film. Peter Boyle, you may know as the monster from fucking Young Frankenstein or Raymond. You know who Peter Boyle is. He has like 2 scenes. He's a fellow cab driver, and Travis is really at a turning point in his life. It's right before the guns start coming into his life, and Peter Boyle has this beautiful scene with him outside where De Niro is really contemplating terrible crimes and terrible action. He has dark places and he is considering them, and Peter Boyle's just leveling with him, like, look, it is what it is. This is the society. Cheer up, you're young, get laid, have fun. And that whole scene, it really got to me. It showed the sensitivity that this film had.
Dude. Yeah, me too. I feel the exact same way, specifically because of that last word you just said, sensitivity. That is the most vulnerable Travis is in the entire movie. And it's so threatening when you actually see a crazy person open up and show you how they feel and how scared and lonely and how angry and how insecure he was about the bad ideas he was having. Terrifying.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Was that your answer too?
It rocked me. Yeah, that was my answer too. That was the one that fucked me
Now,
up
imagine
this time.
that person believes QAnon is real. That's where we are in 2020.
We
Anyway,
haven't gone there, but let's give it a watch, folks. This thing is going to make you think about our world right now. Give it a watch.
We could talk about Taxi Driver all day. That's plenty, I think. Anything else you guys want to say that we missed? Should we head on?
That was wonderful.
Cool. We're going to talk.
So good.
Awesome. We're going to talk about Network after this break for us to pee and me to scarf down some food. We'll see you in a second, film fans.
You talking to me?
Get the fuck out of here. Hey, we're back!
We're back.
Oh my God, De Niro.
Oh my gosh. Enough about Bobby D, though. We got to move on to Network.
Yes.
1976. Directed by Sidney Lumet. You know, I had actually misspoken at the beginning of our podcast. Sidney Lumet had never won an individual competitive.
I didn't know if he had won for 12 Angry Men, but I'm glad you clarified that. Thank
Nominated across the board. Oh, wait. No, he was nominated for 12 Angry Men and Dog Day and a couple other things, Network, but he did not win. He got an honorary award, which is basically whipped cream on shit. So, Sidney Lumet, this is a Oscar
best analogy ever.
Winning screenplay by Patty Chayefsky.
God damn it. Wow.
Patty with 2 D's, Patty Chayefsky. This is Network. It stars Faye Dunaway, Peter Finch, William Holden, Robert Duvall, Ned Beatty, Wesley Addy, and a couple other people that you'd probably recognize if you saw them, including the woman who plays the maid from 2.5 Men. She is in this film.
I did not even notice that.
And then, of course, Beatrice Straight won an Oscar for about 5 minutes of screen time, which I think is the smallest amount of screen time. Yeah. Number 2 is Judi Dench, definitely for Shakespeare in Love, but she has the smallest amount of screen time. I think she had 5.5 minutes of screen time, won an Oscar. By contrast, Alicia Vikander had almost 60 fucking minutes of screen time and won for the same category, because category fraud is something that I'm very much against. Brad Pitt, you were not a supporting actor. You were not. You were the co-lead of that fucking movie. Get the fuck out of here. There were 3 people in Network billed as leads of this movie, and for somehow Brad Pitt, get the fuck out of here with this category fraud. Anyway, moving on to Network. I saw this Broadway play 2 years ago starring Bryan Cranston.
I wish I'd seen that.
This film is sensational. This is very different from Taxi Driver, which is more introspective. This is every single person yells in this movie. There's not a single person who doesn't shout. And it is the first time that I've ever seen this film, which I was very happy to force all of you to spend a couple dollars in rent. It was totally worth it. The short pitch is a television network cynically exploits a deranged former anchor's ravings and revelations about the news media for its own profit. That is not really the pitch that I would go with for this film. Let's see what the storyline says. 1970s terrorist violence is the stuff of network's nightly news programming, and the corporate structure of the fictional UBS television network is changing. Meanwhile, Howard Beale, played by Peter Finch, the aging UBS news anchor, has lost his once strong ratings share, and so the network fires him. Beale reacts in an unexpected way. We then see how this affects the fortunes of Beale and his coworkers. The way in which he reacts after being fired
that's a very ambiguous.
He says he's tired of all the bullshit. He says bullshit on TV.
No, he threatens to kill himself on air.
He ran out of bullshit.
He ran out of bullshit, and he threatens to kill himself on the air in a week. Because he knew that the reason he was being fired was because of low ratings.
The
and he
best
said,
part
well,
is
that'll get us ratings.
He threatens to kill himself on air, and they still put him on TV the next night.
Yeah,
the ratings,
well, because they realize that the ratings are going to be high.
But the good thing is they do it in a thoroughly realistic way as well. Like this isn't
brilliant.
It never jumps the shark once. It's like everything that happens in this film is great.
So Peter Finch is very famously the first person to win a posthumous Oscar for acting. I know this is not an Oscars podcast, but if anybody out there is wondering why Robert De Niro did not win for Taxi Driver, you got to go ahead and see Network, and you'll understand.
Yeah.
Not that Peter Finch is better. It's just you just get it. It's one of those things. It happens every now and then where there's just two fantastic performances, and you got to give it to somebody.
I imagine it would have been a hard choice this year.
De Niro doesn't scream. That's really it.
Peter Finch's character is like, well, you want ratings? Fine, I'll say I'll kill myself on TV and I'll get some ratings. And then William Holden, who's really, really the moral anchor of this, not Peter Finch, who we're with him because he's going off the rails as a news anchor. But he's also saying, I'm tired of the bullshit. I'm tired of the lies. I'm tired of the profiteering of the media. We're supposed to be telling you the news. And instead, all we're doing is fear mongering for attention that we cash in for profits. Wow, sounds like 2020, huh?
They literally predicted what the media was going to become in 1976.
Yeah.
It is insane how prescient it is.
So William Holden, who's the executive producer on the show, and he's basically the bridge between the top level talent and the executives in the boardroom. So William Holden's character basically pleads and says, let's not let Peter Finch's character go out this way. Let's let him retire with dignity. So let's let him issue an apology tomorrow night on the air. So Peter Finch goes on the air and he goes, I'm so sorry. He passed the copy, by the way. Sorry. He passed the copy. So he actually wrote a script that he was going to say. And then he gets on TV and he doesn't read the script. He says, I'm sorry about what I said yesterday. I'm not going to kill myself on the air. It's just that I got sick and tired of all the bullshit. And so it starts a second wave of everybody freaking out about it. So it's awesome. It's a really, really cool way of getting in the film. So that's your introduction. Who wants to take it from there?
I want to hear you guys talk. This is the first time for both of you. I've seen this movie several times. I think this is one of the best movies ever made. I think this might be the best screenplay ever written. I want to hear what you guys think.
I'm going to agree on that. This is
especially watching right now. What was it like watching right now? Because this is all. I'll lead you off with this. Because I've seen it so many times and I love it every single time I watch it, I could not help but because I know the movie so well, I could not help but think about what it was saying about the time I'm living in right now. I'm curious watching it for the first time if you guys were totally in the movie and afterwards if you were reflective or if you were just blown away by how timeless this fucking thing is and how predicting it was about where we're at with globalization, social media in general. Like I'm curious, what did you guys think?
I mean,
what was
I
your
pretty much have one statement to make. It's like this movie is a 2-hour indictment of network TV, and it's one of the best screenplays I've had the pleasure of watching come to life, possibly ever.
Yeah.
Like there is not a single line of dialogue is wasted in this movie.
No,
it's just everything happens for a reason, and it's phenomenal. Like
it's a lesson,
and as well, like I didn't find it like staggering or infuriating or anything given like the state of the media today. Like I picked up on that straight away. It's like they've literally a conversation in a bar at the start of this movie predicts what the media will become in 2020, and then it proceeded to show his decline and what they did, and I was almost inspired.
Yes. Fuck yeah, dude. Hell yeah. And I think that's the power of when satire is done well. Guys, I couldn't stop thinking about our Billy Wilder conversation. I watched a bunch of interviews because Patty Chayefsky sadly died at 58, not too long after this was made. So he died way too young. Probably had a lot more amazing scripts in him, but he had already won for Marty. He was a successful playwright. But one thing apparently that everyone said about him is that man understood that if you're going to talk about, Sidney Lumet said it best. He said, Network is a very serious movie told in a comical way.
Yeah.
And I think that's it in a nutshell. When satire is done well, it can be the most cutting, poignant, receptive way of dealing with something that seems astronomical. Like you can't possibly approach. How are you going to dissect and deal with what mass media and corporate geopolitics, how it affects human beings in their day-to-day lives? And they did it, and I laughed the entire fucking time again. And I still can't stop thinking about how it's making me feel.
I love the gender swap role as well with Farrah Fawcett and the movie producer.
Faye Dunaway.
Yeah, Faye Dunaway. Sorry, I don't know why.
No, you're good. You're good.
it's a total gender swap in that she's the man in the relationship and she's the strong, emotionless one. She has almost no redeeming qualities, and this guy is the one saying, like, the guy is the one saying, "I just want you to love me," and she's not capable of it because she's too busy with her job and with the network and the fact that everything's falling apart from about halfway through. I realized about halfway through this movie I might actually be Howard Beale. Like, you relate to him that much. It's like,
Yeah. Well,
this-
and yeah, so Patty Chayefsky, the writer of this film, won 3 Oscars for writing, which puts him in the class of Francis Ford Coppola and, yes, Woody Allen and Charles Brackett and Billy Wilder. So it's like he is in the echelon. The guy knows how to write a script, and also this is, as John said, was one of his final scripts that he had ever written. So he was groomed. He was ready to go for this. I
mean,
had a lot of big takeaways.
if you're gonna go out, this is the one to go out on.
Mm-hmm. There's obviously the famous monologue that Peter Finch gives, where it's like, you gotta get mad. And again, if you want to know why De Niro didn't win the Oscar for Taxi Driver, just go ahead and Google network monologue, and that's
actually,
probably
it's even been parodied in ads and used in like advertising and stuff since, which is like probably not what they intended. But I tell you, everybody now just go and open up your window and yell out the window, "I'm mad as hell. I'm not going to take it anymore." Okay, I'm not quoting. Go do it now. Go and do it now. I feel like I want to see that echo up New York City tomorrow.
Let's all Howard Beale right now. Jeff, get in there.
The fuck out of here. What I would say is I love the Faye Dunaway character. So to cue everybody in, so Peter Finch, who is he claims to be delusional, and I actually really I admire that they allowed this guy to not just be a prophet. And I know for some reason we always compare these old classics to contemporary movies, and in doing so we generalize, but I just don't know too many scripts that would let this news anchor at the end of his days as in life, but also as a news anchor, who just says, "I'm tired of the bullshit. I want to tell you guys the truth. You all know your food's not fit to eat. You all know that the water is not fit to drink. You know that it's polluted by pharmaceutical companies. You know this, and yet we accept the status quo. The only way it's going to change is not by writing your congresspersons. You have to get fucking furious. You have to get a pitchfork." But rather than just let him be this new messiah come to save us from our own greed and lust for, classism and culture and gentrification, he actually is kind of delusional, and he is hearing voices that he thinks could be God. Like, he is a little insane. They don't let him be a purely protagonistic character, and I think that's a brilliant choice. William Holden actually has to center him and keep him balanced. And then Faye Dunaway, who you would think, just to play with stereotypes of everything, she's the female lead of this film. She actually is the progressive fucking trailblazer who wants to capture. Now we're talking about Taxi Driver a little bit here. She wants to capture violent crime and air it on the news. Yeah. So you're talking Nightcrawler, and she thinks that it would be fantastic television. I said at the beginning of the show, this is what you were saying before, Dave, right? It just so happens that I watched this movie the week of Network, where it's like we watch this true crime drama from real footage that has been saved. Faye Dunaway wants to do that for money, for profit, for eyeballs. She thinks people would tune in to watch people rob banks with guns and hold up people and ruin people's lives, basically. She thinks that would be great television. So that is not a traditionally female role. And also, that's not a traditionally lead of a movie role. None of these people seem like actual protagonists, except for William Holden, who's having an affair with Faye Dunaway, cheating on his wife. Like, nobody in here is a good character. Nobody's here in a pure character. So then when you introduce Robert Duvall and Ned Beatty, who all represent the executive branch, if you will, the boardroom. Robert Duvall, by the way, nobody needs to have me tell you that he's fucking awesome in this movie. Yeah. But he is so understandable. And also, as John mentioned before, funny. He's funny in almost like a De Niro in The Untouchables way. Like,
what am I? I'm a man without a corporation.
Yeah. And you know who that is? Most men. Most men are men without a corporation. And he's sitting there going, I don't even know who I am if I don't have a corporation. You are what you do. And if I don't have my corporation, who am I? It's like Mad Men. And all these things. You watch Network and it's like the cultural zeitgeist is surrounding this film, but this film is anchored at the center. It really is brilliant, and I really hope that everybody who hasn't seen it goes and watch it.
It starts with a voiceover, almost like a documentary voiceover. It ends with a documentary voiceover, so it's almost like it's a documentary. Hey, did you notice the lighting all the way through it slowly got more and more like bizarre as they went? Like, it started off natural and then went very stylistic by the end of it. it's like
Well,
the
certainly
whole
by the Ned
thing,
Beatty scene, it was
the whole thing. Yeah, the whole thing was becoming.
Also, well, the
whole thing
production
was
value of his show
but
changed,
also
right?
like
Yeah.
it was becoming stylized and entertainment, and
Yes.
like
Yeah.
by the end of it, and it was a really great change for me. But like the voiceover at the start sets the scene for you. It's like, this is New York City, like that sort of thing. This guy has been on the air. He's and he lost his wife. But the really sad part is his audience share dropped.
Oh my
Like
god.
that's
Wait,
more important.
Yeah, I mean the voiceover. All right, so again, I can't help but think about these two movies together. Both of these movies are network doesn't revolve the entire time around voiceover, but it opens and closes with it.
There's a couple
And
of
unlike-
them.
Yeah, and unlike the Travis Bickle first-person voiceover, which is enormous in getting you inside Travis's head, this one satirizes the cold old white man in a voice recording booth that is emotionless and doesn't want you to get attached to anything. So the last
Yeah.
line of this movie, this is the story of Howard Beale, the first known instance of a man who was killed because he had lousy ratings. Like,
Yeah,
just the
that's how it
whole
opens.
thing. That's how it closes.
Sadly,
but
probably
basically
not the
beginning,
last.
too.
Yeah.
I think it's I think this movie, what I noticed the most about this watch was that, because when you watch it the first time, for me at least, the first one or two times that I watched it, you cannot help but be awestruck by the more fantastical scenes, Howard Beale's rants on television, the stuff that's happening with what they're actually doing in the corporate end of the network, the giant quote from Neil Beatty, Arthur Jensen, "You have meddled with the primal forces of nature." You cannot help
Yeah.
but think about those giant things. What I was noticing this time, which I think is why this movie actually works, is that at the core of it, the entire message only lands because of the intimate scenes between William Holden, his wife, and William Holden and Faye Dunaway. The whole point is that man who had an entire career in network television, specifically news, not television. He was a newsman, but still
Yeah.
in the network world, he realized as he moved further and further away from it that to actually become a human being, to love those great lines he says at the end of that wonderful fight he has with Faye Dunaway when he leaves her, and he says it, "But I'm not going to die because I touched you, because," I'm paraphrasing here, "but because I feel pain and I feel love and I feel these things." And it's just so poignant. And I don't think this movie would have landed if it had not dissected his personal life so well and created such a weird, it's almost like a separate movie. The intimacy you have with him and his emotional journey and the scenes with the women in his life take this movie beyond satire, which is again why it becomes like extremely serious. It feels dramatic and personal. So there's an intimacy to it that doesn't get lost at all when you journey into that network corporate world. I feel like you're still attached, you're still grounded, even though you're awestruck the entire time. What do you guys think?
I think.
I-
Sorry. Yeah. You go.
No, go.
You go.
You go.
ahead. Well, first of all, I wrote down that I love that it's a New York film without New York City being the main character. That's like an old saying in film people. It's like any film that's shot in New York City is always the number one character. And I didn't feel that way in this film. Taxi Driver,
At all.
I didn't feel that way, but you know, it was even more so because they mentioned Columbus Circle and Brooklyn and all these things. But in this movie, they don't talk about it too much. Even the apartments, they don't be like, well, this is a nice New York City apartment. It's like they just kind of leave that off to the side. But it has that pace and that fervor that still keeps it and establishes it as a New York film. But what I was going to say even more so is oftentimes it bothers me, maybe more so than the average person, when the only conversations people have who are specialists in a film, so these are news people, so they are news specialists, if you will, is when their private conversations are only about specialist things. The one that's coming to my head for this is the Ides of March. They're at the bar afterwards, and none of them just talk about baseball. They're always talking about polls. They're always talking about politics. And it's like, I know that the film has to keep moving, and the best thing to do is keep its material relevant. But because this is a satire, it works so well when Faye Dunaway is literally wooing William Holden to sex, and she's like, oh my god, her ratings are gonna be so fucking good. And it's like, oh my god.
funny.
I mean, her quote right before they sleep together is like, look, all I want out of life is a 30 share and a 20 rating. And then they're sleeping together like a minute later. Like, that's funny. That's really fucking
I don't know
funny.
if they're sleeping together. And I was
Amazing.
really offended to see a woman use a man like that for sex.
Yeah, you're gonna stand up for men. Thanks, Dave. Stand
She
up
goes,
for us,
no,
baby.
no, but how fucking funny is it that she goes,
So
you have a
funny,
wife,
dude.
you have a wife, don't you? And he goes, yeah. And she goes, your wife's in the city right now, isn't she? And Faye Dunaway's and William Holden's like, yeah. And Faye Dunaway goes, okay, so we'll have to go to my place then. It's like,
Yeah, she.
Yeah,
I mean,
he says,
it's
like,
I
what are your
think-
thoughts on
I think
Lust?
one of
It's
the
like,
one of the directions she was given was don't even try to inject any vulnerability in this character because she has none. And if you try, I'll take it out in the editing room.
Well, this is what I
Yeah,
kept
like-
thinking about, is that from a writing standpoint, I've been writing a lot in my pandemic time, and I've been thinking about a lot of this stuff. So I've been kind of reading stuff on my favorite screenwriters. And this is just satire creates such an obvious example of this. It can be a little bit more ambiguous with other genres, but I think one reason these characters, the acting, the performances come so alive, it's not just that they're in the hands of masters. Everyone in this movie is a master actor.
Yeah,
But it's also that because of this genre, everyone's character has one very specific objective. It is
Yeah.
super clear for everyone, and they are relentless. They're animal too. When they're sitting in Hackett's room, Robert Duvall, and they're like, just to be sure, we're talking about a capital. We're talking about murdering Howard Beale, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
like we should kill
Yeah,
someone on
it's,
TV.
it's
Yeah, we're
completely
gonna kill him,
believable
yeah.
by the time you get there because everyone is
Yeah.
so they're
Yeah.
fiending for that, whatever that thing is they're trying to get, which again is why I think William Holden's character is so interesting, because his does shift a little bit. But Jeff, you're totally right, dude. I mean, that sequence might be the funniest sequence in the movie, when they go away together, Faye Dunaway and William Holden, and it's a montage of them like at the beach.
It's a montage, yeah.
And there's a voiceover when the camera's too far away to actually see them on the beach. There's a voiceover when they're at the restaurant. There's a voiceover when they're walking from the restaurant into the room. And then she does not stop talking the entire time they strip down, and she fucks him, and she comes in like 2 seconds. And then she
Yeah, so
whispers.
quick.
The final thing she whispers is like, she's like about to fall asleep after having sex. And then she just whispers one final thought about taking NBC's daytime shows by starting a soap opera, a gay soap opera called Dykes, where
gay
a
soap
woman,
opera, yeah.
a wife, is ferociously in love with her husband's mistress. What do you think? And she falls asleep, and he just pats her head. I mean, that is
Yeah.
genius. That is fucking comic
Well, because
gold.
she had said
Yeah.
at the previous scene that she comes too quickly. And she also said my favorite line, maybe in all movies, which is, I'm sorry I imputed your coxmanship. They were talking about their coxmanship.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
And he
David,
says,
you cut
and
you
he
out. What,
says,
you were
I
saying
stopped
something before.
comparing I stopped comparing genitals in the schoolyard. I think that's his comeback to that. So good.
Yes.
Yeah.
Dave, get in there, dude. What
So
are you
good.
saying?
I tell you what, like even little things like when they're having the first executive meeting, are those guys eating a plate full of lettuce?
They're Caesar salads.
Did you notice
They're
that? Yeah, well,
Caesar
there
salads,
wasn't
yeah.
there wasn't much Caesar in it. It was literally just a plate full of lettuce, and it looked like it was about take 12.
It did. Although I couldn't help it. I love that they
And,
literally
like,
it's in
because
the
that lettuce
script,
was
though.
that lettuce is wilting, man, and they putting that
It
in
didn't
their
look like
mouth.
a sharp
If that
romaine.
doesn't deserve a fucking Oscar, what does? Yeah.
I'm so happy
Yeah.
we're connecting with the humor of this, because this movie, if you are in a bad mood, this could be the most serious movie you've ever seen in your life, because it is so. I mean, look at now. I admittedly got in a rant recently, because not on the pod, about how I was so tired of watching the Democratic national debates, where the network that was carrying the debate was advertising it as if it was a fucking UFC fight, literally showing like them crossing their arms slowly, staring at the camera, and then immediately advertising who won the debate after their network carried the debate. They were profiting off of the debate, and they were profiting off of ripping apart the candidates. It's like,
Yeah,
what is
they-
democracy right
They
here? This
insisted
is
on
like,
showing the weigh-in and everything.
All right, so
yeah, and I'm not
So I
naming any
don't-
networks; it's all of them. But it's like so you could go that way with this movie, but the thing that connected to me was obviously it's realistic, and obviously the impact of it is going to stick with me. But the fact that they found it through humor, and they found it through the brilliant web of everybody's objectives, as you said, John. It's
Yeah.
really a memorable
I
film.
mean,
that
yeah,
just sticks with you.
this movie was both in and ahead of its time.
for sure, I did want to ask you guys
Yeah,
before we
because we do things in circles here.
before we move around. History repeats itself. I could not help but think my whole.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm going to say it again. The whole. my whole
Election year,
response-
also, year.
Also,
Sorry, go.
one of my favorite scenes is where the Revolutionary Army is sitting down with the network lawyers negotiating over fucking royalties. It's
I'm not
like,
giving you
come
any.
on.
of my
And a guy
goddamn
shoots a gun to shut
distribution.
everybody up.
He shoots a gun. Give her the goddamn
Everybody's yelling.
distribution costs. Yeah, I mean, it's fucking those white lawyers. Or God, that guy falls out of his chair. So funny.
Yes.
What was I about to say? I could not help but think about how the responsible audiences thing I keep bringing up. I wonder how many people like. again, I could not help but think about the political nature I'm in because I've seen these movies so many times. I still loved watching them fourth and fifth times, but I was very reflective during and after watching these, and it made me think like, one, the speech that Howard literally gives about the tube. So the first time he finally gets taken up a notch into a more fantastical setting when Faye Dunaway's character has taken over and turned his show from a news show into an actual series television event where he is an evangelist, basically. And he gives his first monologue in the first episode where he talks about no one reads books anymore. None of you fucking read books anymore. Nobody does this anymore. Nobody actually thinks anymore. You dress like the tube. You think like the tube. You fuck like the tube.
My favorite line in the movie is in that scene.
And I do think that there is something to be said about we are no longer, I think in one way, I'm lucky that we're no longer in that. I don't think most people think of the television as the idiot box anymore. There's some really great series television that we don't really call television anymore. However, we have social media now. We have a lot of other things that have filled those gaps. And I do think that in terms of responsible audiences, I'm curious how many people are raging mad about this politic that we are currently living in and have not seen movies like these and are not reading books to actually expand their perspective. I mean, because I do, just let me say that, hold on. I do think that there are people, both of these movies are about people getting very fucking angry irrationally. And in different ways, you kind of get to see it play out. And I think the irony of where we're living in right now is that you're seeing both sides of our politic be convinced that we are living in a world that is not controllable and they're angry. And no one actually has any grounded vision in how to revolt against that. They're just angry. So I thought this movie was really poignant right now because the first step is getting angry. That's not the last step. He says you get angry first and then we start talking about the issues. We need to fucking move beyond those issues. So just once again, responsible audience members, we need to be seeing movies like this and reading more books so that people can actually have the next step of the fucking conversation. Oh no, I couldn't. Sorry. I had to go
were
off.
two lines in that scene. Yeah, there were two lines sticking out the window and yelling mad as hell. No, there are two lines in that particular scene you mentioned. One is there are children alive today who have learned everything they'll know from this tube.
Yeah.
And the other one was you're beginning to think that what you see on here is reality and that your own lives are unreal.
We are the illusion. You are the real.
That's Facebook. That's Facebook right now.
Thank you. I think it's even worse.
I don't care if they sue it. They don't care if they sue us. That's Facebook.
Totally fucking right. They still fuck you, Facebook. You still haven't even taken down the Facebook platforms that are available for the Proud Boys and other folks like that to join up. Like I think we're living in an even worse version of that. So again, it's just like we need to look back in history and we need to look at our best works of art to try to learn more about where we're at right now. And these are two perfect examples of that.
It's the same with any new technology. When it comes out, it takes them a while to wrangle it and figure out how to control it. But yeah, they've definitely taken their fucking time on this one. But anyway.
This is beyond because every single person uses this technology and there's no regulation.
Yeah, I would take that. I'm gonna challenge you on that, Dave.
But we are getting off topic.
Wait, I'm gonna challenge you on that because I do think that if network television was our biggest fear, they had no idea what the fuck was going to happen to social media. So I don't know if they ever actually.
Oh, right? Absolutely.
I think we've gotten worse.
I mean, when did the MPAA come into that wasn't until what?
Okay, so let me ask you a question. Let me bring it back to the movie.
PG-13 was late.
They weren't regulating anything.
Let me bring it back to the movie because this scared me when I was watching it this time. His last monologue in his show, he talks about. This is after he is, for audience members, this is after he has visited the head of the corporation, Ned Beatty, and he gives him this huge godlike sermon basically on how there are no geopolitics anymore. There are only corporations. And he basically sends him out as a disciple into the world to start using his platform on television to preach the word of corporation.
Also contains my favorite shot in the movie.
He gives this wonderful, Peter Pinch, Howard Beale gives this wonderful monologue on the death of the individual. And that hit me like a ton of bricks in a way that I don't think it hit individuals back in the 70s and 76, because we think we live in this world where social media has given the individual a platform. And I feel like it just struck me right to the core. I was like, oh my God, all of this is truly an illusion. So it kind of flips the message that's in this movie about how we are the illusion, you are the real people. Now they have convinced us that we are the real thing and we are the illusion. I feel like social media has kind of like turned it on its head and it scared the shit out of me. Did you guys Did you guys think about that at all when you were watching that?
I was definitely drawing some
Yeah,
parallels.
Good.
It was.
Yeah,
I
it
was
was.
going
Yeah.
insane.
This is a movie.
After
I think
seeing-
you'd. This is a movie you should watch right now.
Right fucking now, dude.
Yeah.
Right
Fuck
now.
yeah. I mean, after seeing The Great Hack and The Social Dilemma, I mean, there's no fucking question that the social media, when he said that people only get their news from this, you know who does that? Our president only gets his fucking news from fucking TV. So yeah, no, I know it's hard. Even no matter what your political, whether you believe in truth or not, I guess that's your political affiliation right now. No matter what, no matter whether or not you believe in truth, you should see this film.
Yes.
How's that?
And I feel like that's as good a wrap up as any.
That's pretty good. Sorry, I went the
Yeah,
fuck
there's
off.
again,
Sorry, I had to
another
say
movie
it.
that
I
we
had
could
to do
talk
it. I'm
about
sorry.
all
I'm
fucking-
sorry.
No, this is another, but this is it. You know what? We're leaving it there because
you
everybody
went-
watching this movie
John
is
went
going to
full
have their
network.
own thoughts.
John went
They're
full
gonna have their-
network during this segment.
There's so much more we could even talk about on top of that, but we got to go for now. It is time for Dave to get a random year generator out, especially
Let's
now that
bring it
Regal
on.
is fucking out and AMC is going to be out as soon
My
as
God.
Tenet. We got to say Tenet at least once. As soon as they leave the theater, Tenet. Yeah. Anyway, so we're going to keep doing the random year generator.
For
Let's
now.
see what happens.
All right. That's the wrong button.
You want to gush? We're gushing about
No gushes,
gushes
for
network
free
somehow.
for- We're waiting so patiently for this noise.
Yeah.
Right. We just kill time amongst ourselves. It's fine. Oh, we're doing a Back to the Future year.
Shut up.
1955.
Oh, that's a
Oh,
good year
fif-
too. I'm excited.
Yeah.
What a fucking year. I think I already have my front runner, and it is not Oklahoma. People, we will see you after this break, after we deliberate what films we're going to do next week. We'll see you in a second to talk about Arnold Schwarzenegger's first film, Stay Hungry. Hey, we're back!
We're back.
Yay.
Here we go.
Oh my gosh! Okay, we are going to announce which films from the film year 1955 we will be discussing on next week's podcast at the end of this segment, so stick around. But first, friends, you gotta stay hungry.
Stay.
We are
hungry.
about to talk about the film that is our redemption of the week, or as it's also known colloquially around this podcast, was it really that bad? This film is Stay Hungry. This is 1976. It stars Jeff Bridges, Sally Field, and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
So effectively,
It is
this
dir-
should be Can You Watch It Without Subtitles?
He's the third bill, Dave. He doesn't have all the lines. It was directed by Bob Rafelson, who famously directed Jack Nicholson and Co. in Five Easy Pieces about 6 years before. So Jeff Bridges had his big breakout in The Last Picture Show. Sally Field was in The Flying Nuns and a couple other films, although Smokey and the Bandit would be the next year, 1977. And then Arnold Schwarzenegger was in Hercules in New York in 1970, and then somehow they decided to try to forget about that and gaslight the public by pretending like this was his first film because it said, and introducing Arnold Schwarzenegger. And I
Yeah.
was like, nah, he's already been introduced by this point.
no.
But anyway,
Technically, this was the first film he entirely starred in. The original print of Hercules in New York had someone else dub the lines over the.
Oh, wow.
interesting.
Yeah, it wasn't until
Interesting.
later
That's-
releases that they used the original dialogue.
That's clever. He also won a Golden Globe for Best Newcomer in a category that was removed because it's a weird category. The pitch
Probably
for
because of this
Stay-
film.
The pitch for Stay Hungry is, what would it be like to work out in a gym with a Confederate flag? I think that's the pitch for this this film. No, the pitch for this film is so-called. That's actually, hold on, I have to start over again because that's literally the beginning of the IMDb pitch. So-called, quote, special agent, end quote, infiltrates into the gym, which is targeted by a dirty business fraud. I don't even like the grammar of this introduction to this movie.
How was
We're off
that?
to a really
Yeah,
bad
what
start.
the
already
fuck
for
is
this.
that?
The first time I saw it, I was like, "Wow, this is where Dodgeball got its plot from." But it's really not.
Yeah, kind of.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, okay. Fuck IMDb for a second. It has a 5.6 in IMDb. So this movie is about Jeff Bridges, who is living in his parents' shadow. Also, it's a documentary. Anybody? Just kidding. His famous parents. Anyway, so Jeff Bridges, his parents died in a plane crash, and now he has literally a plantation in Birmingham, Alabama that has it's not the most for like 2020 as far as like the racial dynamic. I don't think we really knew what we were getting into when we chose this film. We probably should have thought more about that. But anyway, he basically lives in a house that is a very big house on a lot of land in Birmingham, Alabama. That was definitely a plantation. And he also is involved in the family business, which is apparently corporate raiding, where they go in and they try to buy out a bunch of buildings and then sell it to high rises. So his assignment is he has to go to a gym because they've bought all the businesses around the gym. And once they buy the gym, they'll own the entire block so they can demolish it and build a high rise in downtown Birmingham and sell it for commercial real estate purposes. And everybody will make a ton of money. It's also about Jeff Bridges dealing with what it's like to be the legacy in a very racist and very crude, sexist country club in Birmingham, and he gets smitten by both a girl and a guy, not sexually, I suppose, to Arnold, but at the gym. So Sally Field is working at the gym, and he becomes romantically involved with her. And Arnold Schwarzenegger is working out because he wants to win the Mr. Olympus World Prize, which is basically a fancy way of saying the Mr. Universe Award. And so it's like a local. It's just like to the dodgeball example. That's not off the shelf. That is in play. The dodgeball reference.
It is once the movie starts. Like that goes out the window.
Instead of throwing wrenches at him, they actually throw weights at him while he's climbing up the stairs. If you can dodge a weight.
Yeah, that did go through my head when that scene happened. Yeah. Because at that point, everything was fucking ridiculous.
Yeah. So big pitch, especially in this time. It's definitely very Southern. And I guess it's Jeff Bridges playing with. He could be a part of old Alabama and just exploit it for money, including all like the nasty stuff going on sociopolitically, or he could be a part of the new generation of Birmingham, fighting for change and fighting for the younger man. Maybe I'm giving it too much credit. I don't know. That's what the movie's about. It's kind of fun.
Way too much credit.
It's very political.
All right. I'm gonna. Since I'm in charge, apparently, let's go ahead, John. Why don't you start?
All right.
So we can save some of the fun.
All right. So
Dave's cracking a beer. He's ready to speak.
I think I had more fun watching this movie because pretty quickly I just accepted the fact this is the prequel to The Big Lebowski.
Okay. Yeah.
Before this guy becomes the dude, as he flakes away from his privilege and just eventually, I guess he just hitchhikes west into California and just becomes the dude. Because I was there was so.
Dare you put these two films in the same sentence?
I mean, come on. I feel like Jeff Bridges was definitely giving you some dude.
Yeah, he was probably high as a fucking kite to make this movie.
I don't know.
I probably would have been too. He was in his 20s. He had already. He was a star.
I don't think I hated it as much as you did. I didn't love it or like it really, but it didn't bother me quite so much.
Best review ever.
Yeah, I like Bob Rafelson's movies. They're kind of weird. I like Five Easy Pieces a lot. I think Five Easy Pieces is regarded as a great film. I think a lot of people see it and they don't like it as much as they want to. And then so what is the next one he did right after that? The King of Marvin's Gardens.
Yeah, let's see. The director and co-writer went on to such classics as Tales of Erotica, Porn.com, Wet, and the Lionel Richie music video for All Night Long.
All night long. Yeah.
There were a couple of others, but for comedy, I'm censoring them.
He produced The Monkees in the 60s.
He did.
There were a few things about it. I don't know. So yeah, I guess with his movies in general, I don't really think of them as whole movies. I think of them as little sequences. So there were some sequences that I actually did that random for no reason at all hillbilly jam sesh.
Yeah, that was awesome. The Conrad Twitty origin story.
That guy, that one shot that just just because they clearly were that guy's a really good dancer. That one shot where Jeff Bridges is leaning against a tree and the dancing guy comes up behind him. I thought that was fucking awesome. I really wasn't.
And the kid just starts playing the violin. The kid just starts playing the fiddle, and then slowly but surely, everybody just shows up in the frame playing instruments. Yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah,
I'm just dancing. I'm not gonna fuck you.
I know. There was. I know.
I-
I know. There was a lot of white
it
trash
was-
stuff, but it was more endearing to me than I think it probably was. It sounds like to you, Dave. It didn't.
It
The
was
racist stuff was
more
racist,
endearing
and
to
of course
me,
that's fucked up. But it didn't bother
and
me
there was
in
some
the same
sexist
way.
stuff that Jeff Bridges today he would have to sign a waiver for the shit he was doing to Sally Field. Now Sally Field is a fucking awesome actress. She's incredible in this movie. She's a great woman. But there was a lot of like grabbing and a lot of like pushy stuff that I don't know. Actors would be just hesitant to do that nowadays for sure. And so it's a visceral experience watching it, I guess is a nice way of saying it, because you can't watch it and not be like, oh my God, he literally just grabbed Sally Field and like tossed her off to the side. Like you could never get away with that anymore.
You're talking specifically about when he comes up on her at the country club and she's
He
with
does
the,
it
dancing
10
with the other
times during
There's
the
guy.
a couple of
movie.
times,
He does it
yeah.
all the time.
The Screen Goblin website described this film as if Gone in the Wind and Boogie Nights had a car crash.
That's so good.
Guys, did you know Arnold Schwarzenegger played the fiddle? Because he fucking
Yes.
fiddles in this movie.
Is that real? Dude.
No, it's not real at
No
all.
way.
No.
But kudos to Arnold because he got the fingering right.
Yeah,
He
it looked
wasn't
like he was
actually
doing
playing,
something with
but-
the fingering.
You know when you watch
I'm not
guitar
touching
players
that.
and you're like, come on, just fake the chords, just pretend. And like Arnold actually like pretended to finger, and you know what? Kudos to him. Kudos. He was
That's
not
what she
hired
said.
for his fiddle playing.
Yeah.
Jesus.
All right, Dave, tell us your favorite parts of this movie.
Yeah,
It's
Dave,
top
go
five
off,
in
dude. Go
reverse
off.
order.
You
All
fucking
right,
Go from
strap
5 to
yourselves
1.
in, because holy fuck, man.
Why
what-
did you hate
like,
this movie so much?
I mean, I sat there and I watched this with my wife, and can I just say, I'm sorry,
My
Therese.
wife.
Please unpack the suitcase from the door. I'm
See, I don't
sorry
even-
we watched this film.
I don't even try to show Chloe the redemption films, except for Cats. I tried.
I
We
mean,
didn't make it before.
dude, the one highlight of this film was my recognition of like, holy crap, that's Robert Englund.
Yeah.
And I was like, because Robert Englund plays a small part in this film, but
Uh-huh.
it was like, why did they suddenly make one guy sing his lines for a second and then never do it again? And like the movie starts with like, okay, there's a random horse riding scene, followed by a random driving race scene, followed by a scene where we blatantly explain the plot of the movie, which is a plot that doesn't turn up again for about a fucking hour.
Yeah, I think that's right.
and then
I
that
think
fight
that's
scene at the
true.
end is hilarious.
Nothing gels in the entire film. It starts in one place, it goes somewhere else, and I'm pretty sure they rolled
Yeah.
some dice or threw some fucking chicken bones to decide what was happening in the emotional level in the next scene.
See, I would say it really wishes it was like the conservative Jefferson Davis loving Graduate. You know The Graduate?
I would
But,
not put that in the same sentence either.
You know, The Graduate.
Yeah, I mean, if you remove,
I mean, maybe he's not in love with the mom necessarily, but just that like I have so much money and it makes me sad kind of
but
element.
if you
that-
remove the scenes that are totally pointless, this movie would run for 17 fucking minutes.
He said he was going through a hard time. The past 2 years, he was traveling, just killing shit. He was just on a hunting trip for 2 years, and he said his life was really
I mean,
hard.
by the
That's
time, like seriously,
Jeff
by the time we got
Bridges.
to like 48 minutes in, I was ready to turn it off. Like it got borderline offensive.
wasn't Sally? It was definitely offensive. Wasn't Sally
Yeah.
Field good though?
Sally Field was good, but
She was
I mean,
wonderful.
she was also extremely taken advantage of.
Yeah, they exploited her
Yes,
quite a bit.
definitely.
I did not plan on
This
seeing
did
Sally
not
Field
sit
naked in
well-
my life.
Yeah, this did
That
not
happened.
sit
We
well
don't-
with
we
me at
see
all.
it from
Nothing in this
behind,
movie
from
sat
behind.
well with me. Like there was
That
so
was
much.
that was our Lincoln's first lady.
behind.
That was Mary Todd, the mother of our country. I did
And
not expect to
When you
see
get to
that.
an hour and 15, I'm serious, and I've never said this before on this podcast. Turn this off. Just turn
What
it
part
off.
is that?
That's just before they take the two women back to the
That was super awkward.
like it had no point being in the movie. It was ridiculously overtly sexual. It was exploitive. It was like
yeah.
it was offensive. This whole
I actually
fucking
have no
movie
idea what that-
on some level or another and always through is fucking offensive.
I don't know what the character Newton was doing in that scene. He tied her down and then started like playing cards with her and reading her tarot, and then put her in a tanning bed while she was tied down. It was while she was in like nothing. It was really strange. Also, people aren't going to watch this and stop at an hour 15. They're just not going to watch the movie.
Yeah, absolutely. I would definitely say like this movie has elements that are stereotypically racist, misogynistic, sexist, and it probably
Yeah.
should have stayed buried in obscurity.
The misogyny was really weird for me, especially knowing that it's Sally Field. And I know if I hadn't listened to a very in-depth Sally Field podcast I would have thought her life started at Smoking the Bandit. I didn't realize she already had a 10-year career by that point, including The Flying Nuns and a bunch of other TV jobs and even some other
Flying Nun
smaller
was
movie
great.
jobs. Yeah, so she had been doing work for a long time. She was in the Actor Studio LA, so she was in the mix. Like she was a star to be. And again, as I said before, just right around where she's turning 30, so she's 10 years in the business. And Jeff Bridges is just grabbing her and throwing her, and she's not wearing a lot of clothes, and she has to flirt with guys to make him jealous, and it's like all this misogyny, and
half of it doesn't make sense.
I try to ride the line a lot in realism with history, because it's like that it's historically accurate. If you're in Birmingham in the early 70s,
Yeah, come on, you guys. Like we can't watch
clubs,
it like it's 2020. I mean,
no, I know, but it's
this
hard.
was coming off
Not
of
to.
this was
I'm not going to watch Birth. I'm not going to watch Birth of a Nation right now.
No, the thing is, there are similar themes in Taxi Driver, and they pulled them off at a point that transcends all of that.
Yeah, I think so
Whereas
too. I
this,
don't think
this was
movie
just
did.
blatant, and I mean, the whole movie didn't make sense.
Yeah, though in Taxi Driver, he was like, I mean, they had a huge advantage that their lead protagonist was against that kind of stuff. So like, it wasn't just that it was happening in front of you. You had the safety net of feeling like Travis also was disgusted by it as much as you were as a modern audience member. I will say, like, again, I'm not defending it, but like Rafelson and that crew definitely came out of like the sexual renaissance of the 60s. And I think,
I mean,
True.
at
don't
that
get
time,
me wrong. Like, I'm the first person to like defend it was made in that era. It was a different time, that sort of thing. Like, I have taken that position on this podcast before, but this crossed the fucking line for me. It was just too much.
It was so
Too much.
close too, because that, like, when people are intimate, let's say, and they are naked in bed or whatever, it's always weird when they're just fully clothed and walking. You remember that you're watching a movie, so it's a hard line to draw. Like, sometimes we don't see her from the front, but Sally Field getting up and going and looking at a picture, not clothed, but you see her from behind, and yeah, maybe you see too much of her, but like, at least that there's realism in that, in a sense, because that would probably be more like what would happen in real life, rather than the person's wearing a full nightie, or you know what I mean, or like a onesie or something that is like more sensitive to the actress. So it's like it's a hard line to toy, and I think this movie is very entertaining, but that is the thing that I'm stuck with the most.
I know
Not
what you
even
mean. I know
the
what you
ending,
mean.
which is what you said before, which is all the guys from the Mr. Olympus, which is basically all the bodybuilders in speedos in a fight in public.
They're
And they
objectified
just start
a little
flexing
bit.
on caps. It's
I mean,
yeah, no, I know, but
I also am not
it's
sure.
entertaining.
I'm
It is
also not
entertaining.
sure. I wasn't sure when I was watching it if we were supposed to be, because sometimes it's hard to go back in that time capsule. I wasn't sure if we were supposed to judge Jeff Bridges for how he was treating her, because he was that I was like, I thought I was supposed to. I thought I was supposed to see like this rich, privileged white guy that was trying to kind of slum it with people in this gym, specifically her and Arnold Schwarzenegger. And yet he was still the same. The way he behaved, he was very similar to those assholes who were clearly assholes in the country club. So I kind of thought we were supposed to feel that way, which is why he ultimately fails at creating any kind of real relationship with either of them.
yeah.
So
See,
I'm not saying we were supposed to enjoy watching that, but I do think that
I
they
didn't
were
get
conscious
any of that
it.
nuance at all.
Really?
I was just offended by most of this film.
I think I could see them going.
I did
for
feel
it.
that. I did feel that way.
I was.
but
I'm
it was
sort
still
of on
hard to
board with you,
watch.
John. I'm sort of on board with you in that I was entertained at parts of this film for sure.
Like, literally, the only part of this film I liked was right at the end when they're out in the street. They're like, they want us to do like poses. He's like, well, we may as well. And they
Hold
start
on,
posing in
me-
the street and riding
tell
on
me you
buses. And
Tell me you liked my favorite part of this movie was when the Mr. Universe Olympus. What I thought it was I thought it was Mr. Universe. I thought the actual name of the competition was
in
Mr.
real
Universe.
life, but I think in this it was Mount Olympus.
No.
'cause
The name of the
copyright?
gym was the Olympus Gym, but the competition was Mr. Universe.
it was for Mr.
Oh, it
Universe.
still was.
Yeah.
Anyway, so when it's Arnold versus
was
the other
drinking.
guy, they have their in sequence poses.
been
Audience film fans, when they're doing things in sequence together, they're mirroring each other in their
Yeah, it's
poses for
funny.
the official qualification and the judges.
Yeah,
and then they start
funny.
going off afterwards and improving on poses.
Yeah,
and the
that's funny.
announcer walks up the announcer walks up and goes, "All right, break it up, you two." Like they're having like a pose off. That fucking killed me.
I mean, I actually looked up a couple of things. I read some review about like it finally gets to the bodybuilding competition you were promised. I'm like, really?
You were promised?
Like, you were promised? Yeah, that like.
Come on, you didn't want to see Arnold take his clothes off? He's been dressing up like Batman.
They did a good job. He was dressed up as Batman the whole time.
Film. What are you talking about?
No, he did. They did a pretty good job of delaying it to try to keep you hanging on.
I mean,
the voiceover was tough for me. It was so Southern. It sounded like an SNL sketch. It really did. The voiceover sounded like an SNL sketch.
Weird intro.
Also, I wrote down this note. If anybody could explain this to me, my note was, is that guy getting his taint massaged? I don't know why I write these notes and I assume I'm going to remember exactly what I was talking about. Is that guy getting his taint massaged? I'm pretty sure Thor was getting a massage and they were getting up in there for sure. And then the response is, business causes tension. I don't know what that means. Those are my notes.
I know we're making fun of it, but I thought that fight at the end was like,
I'm not making fun of it. I fucking hated it.
Damn, Dave really hated this movie, you guys.
Yeah, it's not the best. I also wrote the klepto scene. I don't remember what the klepto scene is, but it's funny.
Now I am very aware.
Jeff Bridges just stole a picture for no reason.
Second beer
Dave, listening to you talk about this, it's making me feel extra guilty because, as Jeff and I have admitted, I did not watch this with a woman in the room, and I feel like maybe I was a piece of shit because I didn't judge this as hard as I should have.
I mean, it's sad we're not recording this because at one point I looked around to my wife and she just literally had the O face. It was like her mouth was wide open. She was like, "What the fuck is happening?"
Now let me just give you a little snapshot of Bob Rafelson. And again, I can't tell if this is the Times. This is Ellen Bernstein telling this story. So in The King of Marvin's Gardens, she turned 40 when they were making it, and she was distraught, and she was having like this terrible day. So to cheer her up, Bob Rafelson and Jack Nicholson went to her hotel room, knocked on the door. She opened the door, and they were standing there completely naked with a birthday cake, and she thought it was hilarious. And she had them in, and they got drunk, and they had a fun time, and they all got naked, and she's like hung out and stuff. So I don't know if things sometimes, looking back, I can't tell if like, is this weird? Did Sally Field feel super uncomfortable and women in that time period always felt super uncomfortable?
I don't think Sally Field did feel super uncomfortable, but like, again, like I said, I'm watching this as a modern audience now.
Right. That doesn't make it okay. No, you're right.
And
you're right.
Like this entire film is not fucking okay with me at all.
Right. For me, it wasn't the demeanor; it was the grabbiness of it. It was just very handsy.
It's the grabbiness. It's the random scenes. It's the fact that like you don't like people are reacting differently from one scene to another, and it's like fucking make up your mind. How are they going to react?
No, you're totally right. It's funny that you're saying that though with the grabbiness, because I think I was out of this whole week. I think I was the most uncomfortable when De Niro wouldn't let Sybil Shepherd leave the theater, and he kept grabbing her. And trying to, you have to talk to me. You have to talk to me. I think that offended me more than this movie did, just because I wasn't taking it as seriously. But I hear you guys. You're totally right. This movie is definitely made by erect penises.
Yeah, oh my god!
Like it takes a lot for me to say don't watch a movie. But I'm seriously saying, do not watch this fucking movie.
I think everybody who's been listening to this segment for the last 20 minutes knows to not watch this movie. And also, but here, the big takeaway, if you've made it this far, if you're in a gym and there's a Confederate flag, I don't care if it's the 70s or 2080, get the fuck out of there. Why are they working out of there?
Yeah, you're going to get some weights thrown at you at some point.
Get out of there. Get out. Get out! Oh my gosh! Also, that country club does not look fun.
Realistic as well. Anyway, moving on.
Yeah, I'm with you on that for sure. All right, well, you know what? We've done all we could for this film. That's not true. We didn't do all we could.
Yeah, we didn't burn it.
We really didn't even.
You're welcome, audience. Yeah, Jeff Bridges, Sally Field, Arnold Schwarzenegger. You can decide for yourself. It's out there for rent somewhere. We're gonna move on to next week. 1955 is the year of James Dean. It's just what it is. He had East of Eden and Rebel Without a Cause come out this year. Giant came out the following year. And he died in 1955. So this is the James Dean year, 1955. So we are going to start with Rebel Without a Cause. You may know it from all of the posters of people with the quote, "Get busy living, get busy dying," or that's not it. That's Shawshank. It's
Jesus.
It's what is it? What's the quote? The quote is
it what he tells the cop? I don't know what quote you're talking about.
Live each day like it's your last day.
Dream like you'll live
Fucking
forever.
man. I have
Jeff?
the poster in my goddamn room.
Live each day like it's your last, and dream as though you'll
All
live
right,
forever.
what's
I think
what's
that's
the next
quote.
movie we're doing? John, do you remember?
Next movie we're
No.
doing is Diabolique. Diabolique. It's a
Diabolique,
foreign
yeah.
film. It's a French film.
By
And apparently, I'm also the only
yeah.
person that makes fucking notes during our
I asked you if you wrote it
discussions.
down. Yeah, I was like, I'm gonna forget this.
I just wanted to call him out. All
And
right, so
then
we're doing
our
Rebel
bad
Without a
movie.
Cause, Diabolique.
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 With a K or a C? With a K or a C?
It's a QUE.
It's a QUE. Jesus.
Diabolique.
It's the French
And then our
spelling.
redemption
Thanks,
film.
Reagan.
Our redemption film is going to be a really fucking fun monster film, and Dave is going to announce the name of it right now.
The monster film we're doing is Bride of the Monster with Bela
Makes
Lugosi.
sense, right?
Yes.
Bela Lugosi, come on, come
And let's
see us
do this-
next week, film fans.
Wait, hold on,
Wait,
real
hang on.
fast. Let's do. I kind of
Yeah.
wanted to start doing this, just for everyone to know. Diabolique is available on Prime if you want to join us, and
Yeah.
Rebel is available on what did
HBO
we say?
Max.
HBO Max, and you'd have to rent.
It's on Pluto
you'd have to rent
TV.
the Redemption
Bride of the
movie.
Monster's
Yeah,
on
it's
Pluto TV. You can download Pluto
so they're
TV and
available
watch it for
to
free.
watch if you
Yeah.
want to. Join with us. That was fun.
Join
What a
with us, film
fucking
fans.
Year. It's 1976. I can't believe we got to watch two of the greatest movies ever made in one week. That
Yeah.
was fantastic.
Yeah, what a contrast. 2 and 1. Yeah.
Yeah.
I will see you next week. Thanks for joining us, film fans. Dave, have fun finishing that beer. We'll see you soon.
I'm a human being. God damn it!
My life has value.